They say there are places on this earth where the air grows thick, not with mist, but with memory. Echoes of grief, pain, and sorrow hang in the trees, woven into the soil. And among them, none whispers louder than Aokigahara, the sea of trees, the forbidden forest of Japan. Nestled at the foot of Mount Fuji, Aokigahara is breathtakingly beautiful. Lush with ancient trees, moss-covered rocks, and twisted roots, it is a living monument to time. But as stunning as it is, something about the forest repels the soul. The silence is unnatural. Birds do not sing here. Even the wind seems hesitant to pass between the trees. Locals say the forest is cursed. Not in the dramatic way you see in movies, but cursed in a quiet, chilling way. Compasses fail. Paths vanish. People go missing. And sometimes, they're never found. But beneath the surface of folklore and tourist warnings lies something older, something darker, something few dare speak about. Our story tonight begins with a man named Toru, a documentary filmmaker from Tokyo. Disillusioned with city life and drawn by rumors of the supernatural, Toru decided to explore Aokigahara, not for thrill, but to capture something real. He had read every article, watched every video, memorized every map. He was prepared, or so he believed. Armed with a camera, a notebook, and a single flashlight, Toru stepped into the sea of trees on a fog-choked morning in early autumn. The locals had warned him. They always do. "Do not stray from the path," said one old woman in the nearby village. "Do not speak to anything that speaks to you first. And above all, do not look back if you hear footsteps behind you." Toru had smiled politely, thanked her for the advice, and continued on. After all, these were just stories, right? But stories often begin with a man who doesn't believe in them. And some forests remember those who dare to doubt them. The forest closed in around Toru like a slow-moving tide. Within minutes, the road behind him vanished in the mist. Only the crunch of his boots on fallen leaves marked his passage, each step more uncertain than the last. He began filming, sweeping pans of the dense foliage, the curling vines, the eerie stillness. His voice, steady and calm, narrated facts for his future documentary. Aokigahara spans over 30 square kilometers. Its lava bed, formed centuries ago from Mount Fuji's eruptions, makes it nearly impossible to dig into the soil. That's why roots twist along the surface, exposed like veins on aging skin. He zoomed in on tree trunks scarred with strange carvings, symbols he didn't recognize, worn smooth by time. The first sign came subtly. As Toru set up a tripod near a narrow clearing, he heard a sound, a faint knock, like wood tapping against wood. Once. Then twice. Then silence. He froze. Not from fear, but curiosity. Woodpeckers? But again, no birds lived here. The forest was dead quiet. Then, about 20 meters ahead, he spotted something. A red ribbon tied around a tree branch. It was not weathered like the rest of the forest. The ribbon looked new. Fresh. He stepped closer. And then he saw the second ribbon. Then a third. They formed a trail. He remembered reading about this. Hikers and explorers often tied ribbons to trees so they could find their way back. But these were too perfect, equal in distance, vibrant in color, as if placed moments ago. Still filming, Toru followed them. Each ribbon fluttered just slightly, as though something invisible had brushed past them seconds before. The deeper he walked, the heavier the air felt. It wasn't just the altitude, he was used to that. This was different. It was as if the forest didn't want him there. The trail of ribbons ended at a tree unlike the others. Massive, with roots gnarled into unnatural shapes, almost like arms reaching out. And there, nestled between the roots, was something Toru wasn't prepared for. A worn satchel. Covered in dirt and moss. Half buried, but clearly abandoned. He hesitated. And then, the camera picked up a whisper. Not from the trees. Not from the wind. It came from behind him. A voice, female, soft, and almost musical, saying just one word. Tasakit. Help me. Toru spun around. Nothing. No footsteps. No figure. Just trees. But the red ribbons were gone. Every single one vanished. And the forest felt suddenly, terrifyingly, alive. Toru's heart began to race. He panned the camera around in slow, jerky motions, but there was no trace of the red ribbons, no movement, no wind, no explanation. The satchel by the roots remained still, untouched, like it had been waiting for him. Against better judgment, Toru crouched and opened it. Inside were a few decayed belongings, a water bottle, mold-eaten notebooks, a scarf. But then he found a phone, cracked, covered in dried dirt, but intact. The battery was dead. He pocketed it, planning to charge it later. Perhaps it belonged to someone who had gone missing here. Perhaps it could help tell their story. But just as he stood, the forest shifted. It wasn't that anything moved, no branches snapped, no leaves stirred, but the air itself changed. The silence that had once been peaceful now felt like pressure, pushing inward from all sides. And then, the trail disappeared. Where he had walked moments before, there was now only dense growth. No opening, no path, just endless rows of trees, each one seemingly identical, tall and unmoving. It was as if the forest had folded in behind him. Panic crept in. He turned back to the tree with the satchel, but even that now looked different. Less ancient, more ordinary. The roots no longer curled like arms, and the moss seemed freshly grown, covering up all signs of the bag he had just touched. He stepped back, disoriented. His compass spun wildly in his hand, the needle twitching in every direction. Okay, he whispered aloud, trying to stay calm. Just retrace your steps. But which steps? There were no markers now. No footprints, no ribbon trail, no sign of passage. And then he heard it again. The same voice. Only this time, closer. Tasakit. This time, it wasn't a whisper. It was behind him. Right behind him. He turned sharply, and saw her. A woman. Barefoot. Dressed in a pale kimono, stained and torn at the hem. Her long black hair obscured her face. She stood completely still beneath the shadow of a crooked tree, head slightly bowed, arms limp at her sides. She didn't speak again. Toru froze, breath caught in his throat. The air around her shimmered faintly, like heat waves over asphalt. But there was no warmth here. Only cold. He raised his camera, hands trembling. But when he looked through the lens, she was gone. No trace. Nothing. Just trees. That was the moment Toru realized this forest didn't just hold spirits. It played with them. With their pain. With their presence. With those who dared to see them. And now, it was playing with him. Toru backed away slowly, trying to convince himself that what he saw was a hallucination, stress, low blood sugar, maybe the forest playing tricks on his senses. But deep down, he knew. This wasn't in his mind. It was real. Still filming, he spoke quietly into the camera. If this footage survives, if anyone finds this, I saw someone. She was right there. But she didn't move. She didn't blink, she just stood there. He turned to move, but the forest shifted again. This time, not subtly. Trees that had been spread apart now seemed to huddle close together, narrowing the space, cutting off the light. The mist thickened, curling around his legs like fingers pulling him down. His flashlight flickered, once, twice, then stabilized. And then, a sound. Footsteps. Light at first. Barefoot. Crunching over twigs and leaves. Toru turned slowly. The woman was there again, closer. Still silent. Still unmoving. But now, her face was partially visible beneath the curtain of black hair. Her skin was pale as snow. Her mouth, ever so slightly open, as if caught in the beginning of a scream. Toru held his breath. The camera caught everything, and through the small screen, the forest felt even darker. He took one shaky step back. Crack. He stepped on a branch. The sound echoed far too loudly. The woman tilted her head. A slow, deliberate movement, like a puppet pulled by invisible strings. And then, she smiled. Not warmly. Her smile was wrong, stretched too wide, too slow, exposing teeth that looked almost human, but not quite. There was no joy in her expression. Only hunger. She raised one hand, palm facing him. Then, without warning, she let out a sound. A gasp, sharp, broken, and full of sorrow. Not a scream, not a cry. A gasp from lungs that had once breathed life, but no longer did. The sound hit Toru like a punch to the chest. He stumbled, tripping over a tree root and falling hard onto the ground. Dirt filled his mouth, the camera hit the ground with a muffled thud, and the image went sideways. When he looked up, she was gone. The forest stood still once more. Only the silence remained. But that silence now felt different. Not empty. Watched. Every tree seemed to lean closer. Every shadow deeper. The forest wasn't just watching him now. It was waiting. Then the voice came again. But not just one. Tasakit. 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 Dozens of voices. Male and female. Child and adult. Layered atop each other like echoes trapped in the bark. Calling out for help. Calling out to him. Toru scrambled to his feet, grabbing the camera. "No," he whispered. "No, I'm not staying. I'm leaving now." But which way was out? And why? Did it feel like the forest knew he was going to say that? Toru ran. There was no trail to follow, only instinct and fear. Trees passed in blurs, roots threatened to trip him at every step, and still the voices echoed behind him. Not angry. Not menacing. Just desperate. Tasakit, Tasakit. The cries were so human. So close. As if the forest wasn't haunted by spirits, but by memories. By moments frozen in time, looping endlessly in the air, waiting for someone to hear them. His flashlight flickered again, this time dying completely. Darkness swallowed him. Toru dropped to his knees, struggling to catch his breath. The cold of the ground seeped through his clothes. He tried to steady his hands, fumbling for his phone to use as a light, dead. Of course. He pulled out the old phone he'd found in the satchel earlier. Out of pure instinct, he pressed the power button. This time, it turned on. Dim screen. 5% battery. A single notification. Draft message, "Don't trust the woman in white." Toru stared at the screen, chills running down his back. Who wrote it? More importantly, what happened to them? The phone buzzed once, just once, before dying again. Then he heard it. A new sound. Water. Flowing gently. A stream? He pushed forward, moving toward the sound. It grew louder, guiding him through the darkness like a lifeline. And then he broke through the mist, and there it was. A narrow creek cutting through the forest. Moonlight reflected faintly on its surface. Across the stream, a small wooden shrine stood, half collapsed. It looked ancient, forgotten. But to Toru, it felt like safety. He stepped into the water. The moment his foot touched it, the voices stopped. Complete silence. Even the air felt clearer, lighter. He crossed and approached the shrine. At its base, covered in moss and dirt, lay dozens of small offerings, coins, wooden plaques, tiny dolls. But one item stood out, a photograph, sealed in a clear plastic bag. It showed a man and a woman standing in front of the forest's entrance. Smiling. Young. And the woman. Toru leaned closer. She was the same woman he'd seen in the woods. Same kimono. Same hair. But in the photo, she looked alive. On the back of the photo, scribbled hastily in faded ink. I came to find you. I followed your voice. But now I understand, you were never calling for help. Toru stepped back. The forest hadn't been luring people in with cries for help. It was using the voices of the lost to call the living. The woman in white? She wasn't a victim. She was the bait. And Toru? He'd been chosen. Toru stood at the shrine for a long time. He wasn't sure how long, minutes? Hours? The forest didn't run on human time. But in that stillness, something changed. The pressure in the air faded. The shadows pulled back. Even the trees seemed to stand straighter. It was as if the forest had let go. He didn't run. He simply walked. Step by step, he followed the stream. It twisted and turned through the woods, and somehow, despite the darkness, despite the fog, it led him back to a trail. A real one. One with worn signs. Broken railings. Evidence of humanity. And then, the edge of the forest. Dawn was breaking when Toru stumbled into the nearby village. Muddy, exhausted, and wide-eyed, he collapsed in front of the same small store where he had parked his car the day before. The old woman he'd spoken to earlier was there, sweeping the porch. She looked at him, unfazed, and said only, "You saw her." Toru nodded slowly. "You're lucky," she said, setting her broom aside. "Most who see her, stay." He didn't speak. There were no words. Later, after sleep and food and silence, Toru reviewed the footage. Much of it was intact. The forest. The ribbons. The satchel. But the woman? Gone. Not a single frame showed her face. Only flickers. Blurs. Static distortions. In one shot, her voice could barely be heard, twisted, reversed, almost mechanical. It didn't matter. He remembered. He uploaded a portion of the footage, just the forest, the sounds, his narration, onto his channel. But he left out the voices. The shrine. The message on the old phone. Some stories, he realized, are warnings disguised as mysteries. And Aokigahara doesn't need help being found. It's always waiting.
They say forests hold memories. Some are ancient. Some are sorrowful. And some are hungry. If you ever find yourself near Mount Fuji and the trees seem to whisper your name, remember this. Do not stray from the path. Do not follow the ribbons. And if a woman in white calls to you from the shadows, Don't answer. Because some cries for help are only bait. And some stories should never be followed.